Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Metrics Podcast here at TigersMLReport.com. I'm Raul Castillo. Looks like it might be solo for a little while. Chris is out sick, and we're just waiting on Uper, but Chris got some sort of bug, so hope he feels better. Talked to him a little earlier. He was going to try to rudge through it, but unfortunately could not go to the task. So it's okay. So hopefully Chris feels better. It's going to be a light show this evening as the Tigers still haven't really. We're about 2 weeks out. I mean, I think they're probably loading up the truck right now head down to Lakeland to get everything going. Saw the truck being loaded for Chicago. And so the White Sox had a tweet about that earlier. Another move happened today. David Robertson signed with the Rangers 1 year. And we'll get to all the base Hall of Fame stuff to get to and a little bit of prospect discussion. So, and there's a couple questions online. So, but before we get to all that, it's playoff time, and the road to Vegas goes through San Francisco and Baltimore. So ask the Lions and Chiefs about that. BetOnline is your number one source for playoff football odds, stats, trends, and lines. With everything from point spreads to hundreds of player performance prop bets, we got you covered. Head to BetOnline today and stay updated on all the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. Yes, and we'll also discuss the Drew Anderson signings. Yes, and the Tigers open up training against the Yankees, and so as Uper gets set up here in a second, Uper will be joining me here. Just give me a thumbs up when you're ready, Uper. See you behind stage. He's good. Okay, Uper, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. My internet just croaked on me, so I'm going old school on the phone. Sorry about that.
It's okay. No, I figured it was something of a technical nature, but no, just talking plenty. Yeah, the Tigers signed Drew Anderson. I'm trying to pull up some video for our fans to watch this pitcher who pitched in Japan. I believe it was in Japan last year. So, but it is a. Well, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead, Uper.
Well, it looked like, just from what you read and everything people were saying about him, that he's another one who's on that worthwhile list of taking a shot at, right? He has some ability. You're only looking to get somebody who can give you 50, 60 innings if everything went perfect. Why not?
Yeah, and look, and the Tigers are also we're scouting a couple Cuban players down in Miami this week too, as they're continuing to look for essentially pitching. I mean, that's all there is to it. You can never have enough pitching. Right. It is a time and true philosophy, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And so I think the Tigers too, if you're looking at their starting pitching situation at the big league level, I think it really kind of, you're going to need all, because nothing's guaranteed, nothing is guaranteed of what's going to happen up there. And so I think having guys like Drew Anderson, or even if they go ahead and sign somebody else too, you can never have enough pitching. And so I did find some Drew Anderson videos. So let's get show what he's all about here. And so I pitched I believe it's Hiroshima.
The Carp.
I love that. By the way, I have a Tokyo Giants cap, or I think there's something else now, but
Yomiuri or something.
Yeah, Yomiuri. Yep, correct. So now I've always wanted a Carp hat. I know somebody I know, a good friend of mine has a Carp hat, but
nice.
Yeah, he's got a nice, smooth, like a little over the top delivery, a little bit.
He looks tall.
Yeah. See here, looks like a loose point, like a high mid 3/4 looks like. But yeah, while we have that plan, just the Hall of Fame vote happened too, and I see, I think Uper, we can do this every single year, that the travesties that took place, depending on how your point of view of that is, but the usual kind of shenanigans. Depends on what you think, if it's shenanigans or not. So
a lot of times it just comes down to if you're a big haul or a small haul guy, really.
Yeah. And there was, I mean, in terms of what the Hall of Fame vote came down to, essentially is there's two schools of thought when it comes to this. It's the people that have been accused of steroids to some extent, and the people that haven't. It's just that's pretty much about it. So Gary Sheffield did not make the Hall of Fame. It was Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton, and Joe Mauer.
Yep.
Joe Mauer, kind of a lock, I would think. But yeah, so Sheffield is now with Barry Bonds, and Roger Clemens is never going to make the Hall of Fame. And despite, I mean, throughout the numerous examples in history of people who are not exactly the greatest characters are, in terms of baseball, there's, I mean, you can go back to, let's see here. I mean, I'm trying to think of the former, I mean, you heard stories about Ty Cobb. There's Nap LaJoy, who was a known racist. Some of these guys are not they're not good people. And so I don't know. I go on and on about that. But Beltre is well deserved too. I mean, Beltre is but Todd Helton, I don't know about that. I mean, Todd Helton, what do you think about Todd Helton?
Well, certainly if you strip away where he played, and that's in a lot of respects, that's not a player's fault where he played, right? I mean, he got drafted there. He ended up playing there. He liked it there. He stayed there. It was a great place to hit. He ended up hitting, 315 for his career?
Yeah.
Let's face it. If you got a boost from the numbers in Colorado, I still think he had the longevity and still would have put up decent numbers everywhere else. He would have been close. So I don't have a big problem. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, they have a team in Colorado, so people in Colorado have to be considered if they have good careers. There's no taking that away from them. I was really surprised. I saw a couple of people call Beltre, that little backhanded compliment that he was a compiler, that he played a long time and he compiled all those numbers. Well, okay, that's fine with me too. I think he was a Hall of Famer, 5-time Gold Glover at third base. I mean, those don't grow on trees. I'm not saying he was George Brett, right, or Mike Schmidt, but he was pretty damn good, and I think he deserved it.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, if you want to put compiler, then Don Sutton would come to mind too. I mean, Don Sutton never missed a start in his career, and imagine if he had any. No, if he. Oh, that was a nice pitch there. If he would have missed any time, any significant period of time, he would not be made press, not be in the Hall of Fame. Rest in peace, by the way. I mean, he did win 300 games, and he hit one of the benchmarks. So, but
for every year now, for the rest of the time, you're people who are supporters of a particular player who gets in. All they have to say, and it'll be satisfying to me, is he crossed the Harold Baines threshold. Right? He was more qualified than Harold Baines, so okay, he's it.
Well, and I like Todd's idea here. He says in the chat, I always thought they should have a controversy corner at the Hall of Fame. Could be a sneaky way to recognize your steroid / Pete Rose players. That's a good point, Todd. I mean, it is a way to do that, and it addresses the elephants in the room, their stats. Because if baseball is purely driven, the majority of the time it's driven by stats.
Yeah.
So we're going to choose to ignore it when it comes to, I mean, look at gambling baseball. I mean, now it looks antiquated now with all what's going on with betting online and all that now, and the sophisticated levels and everything. So, I like Stand's stat right here. Helton batted 270 with 2 strikes. That's impressive.
That is.
Yeah. And speaking of Denver, by the way, I am wearing a Denver Bears cap, but this is before his time. But this is around the time they were a AAA affiliate of the Tigers. But yeah, either way, it's going to come with that controversy. It comes with that discussion a little bit, but I've kind of become like Chris about it, like kind of like, I'm not going to, it is what it is kind of thing. But I mean, the one thing about Beltre is pretty interesting too. He didn't make the All-Star team until after the age of 31.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, he's not the only person I mean, you have to go through the Hall of Famers, but he's not the only person who had a second half surge in their career. I mean, you look at Nelson Cruz and a few others. I mean, Nelson Cruz wasn't any good till he was 28. I'm not saying he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, but he's had a nice, long, productive career. So that's fine with Beltre. I mean, but didn't Beltre start when he was 19? Didn't he get called up early?
I believe he did.
Yeah.
Double check that. But what's interesting is, the other fun fact about Todd Helton, he was a quarterback before Peyton Manning, I believe, at Tennessee.
Yep.
So there's a fun fact for anybody that not know that.
And then another fun fact is Joe Mauer was recruited. He was recruited to play quarterback at Florida State out of high school.
Yeah,
and
Bobby Bowden.
Yeah, right? he turned that down. He went to one of the I forget the name of it now, but a big Catholic school, powerhouse athletic program in St. Paul, Minnesota. I was living in the St. Paul suburbs then, and he was a legend already because his family was a big local sports legend family, and he was on the nightly news all the time, setting records at the high school level, but both in football and baseball.
Yeah, I remember when he signed. It was on Sports Illustrated, which we're gonna talk about Sports Illustrated and the demise of Sports Illustrated here tonight too as well. Stand with does Beltre's ascendance after 31 means there's a hope for Javi?
There you go.
But I remember he was on a Sports Illustrated cover too, I believe, right out of high school. I think right around the time he got drafted. I can't exactly remember, but I remember the big deal signing him, or when the Twins drafted him, and then I don't like to. It's just one of those guys that remind me of like every annoying player against the Tigers. He was just annoying, just like outright. Oh god, him and Justin Morneau, the year that they went off, I was over it.
What happened in Minneapolis around that time amongst Twins fans? Publicly, they were very split on that draft pick. I mean, there were people who wanted the hometown hero, Mauer, but there were a lot of people who were equally pissed that they were going with the hometown guy over Mark Pryor. I mean, Mark Pryor was a big deal out of USC, right? He had, and then he got out to that fast start for the Cubs, and Mauer was still in the minors for that first year. There was a lot of bitching and moaning about that in Minneapolis until Mauer got up there and became a ball player.
I did not know that. And because I know that Mark Pryor had to quote perfect pitching mechanics.
Yeah.
That was the big thing about Mark Pryor. It was that his mechanics were flawless. But again, that was proven incorrect. So but this time of year, of course, there's still quite a bit of free agency. There's a lot of players still left on the board. A lot of the second tier guys. Ryan Hoskins signed with the Brewers. So that was an interesting deal that happened this week. The Dodgers reached a 1-year deal with James Paxton. So that's going to be probably, I think the contract's performance driven. And then the biggest news out of Detroit, though, is that Jackson Jobe got invited to spring training camp. So it is, Chris and I, like I said, we talked about his start in Erie and how he was able to manage that flawlessly. And so he had a good Arizona Fall League. This should become the no surprise to no one, Uper.
No, I mean, I didn't find it that stunning that they want to see him in the big league camp for at least, 10, 12 innings or whatever ends up being. I think that's great. He'll face a lot of great hitters, perhaps. You never know with a spring training lineup, but it'll be fun to watch and see how that progresses. But let's face it, go back to Rick Porcello. How quick did he get to the majors? Pitchers get hurt, and if he's throwing well enough and he has the stuff some point this summer, if they're anywhere within hailing distance of contention, they ought to probably get him going.
That's the thing that you would think if he's going to be, it's how the Tigers view him as potentially a 6 or 7 starter down the line. I mean, this year, as quickly as this year, and he might not. Yeah, it's gonna. And Daily Ninja said it best. It's gonna be brutal wait if Jobe looks impressive. Yeah, But also at the same time, this guy's coming off injury. You want to make sure that you nurse him, not necessarily nurse him to the point of, or even for example, like Stan mentioned earlier, if Mize could see this season having Mize start in Toledo. I said that a couple weeks ago. I thought that Mize may start the year to get some innings going, what have you. It might be a chance that Joe Bell pitches Mize. Who knows? I mean, it is. That's the one variable that we do not know at this point. And you got to remember too, spring training numbers don't mean jack. We know that.
Yep.
It's really the quality. I mean, if he's doing this against first tier players, then you can put that in consideration. But again, a lot of times it takes a while for some of these bats to get going anyway.
Right.
So I don't know, Uper. That's good to see. And
it is a wonderful problem to have. Okay. So that is he ascending at the proper pace? As long as he keeps moving forward and keeps looking good, it's a great problem to have if you're trying to judge when do you bring him to the big leagues. That's the best problem to have in the world.
Yeah. No, it's not. And I mean, he's been on prospect rankings. Baseball America released their top 30 Tiger prospects. It's him and Clark essentially up there along with Keith. So there's no real. Go ahead.
You know, people need to also temper things. He's a young kid. He could struggle. I mean, that's very possible. You know, there could be a learning curve. We don't know. No one can really say they know. We know he has great stuff. But, you know, great stuff doesn't always produce outs right away until he starts learning how to harness it and use it. So we'll see. It's just a very exciting development to see him very highly ranked on everybody's list, coming to spring training on the big league roster with a big league invite, excuse me. It's all great. It's all moving in the right direction. Stuff that, you know, last year when we were hearing about the back problems and everybody was grinding their teeth over Marcelo Meyer, we did not foresee us being in this nice a position of watching him now.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the dazzling position to be in, you look at the Baltimore Orioles, and it was an interesting comment that Mike Elias said during their Birdland Caravan, which the Tigers didn't do a caravan at all this year, which not even do anything like. By the way, it was funny when they're showing the Ford Field shots. You notice the scoreboard's gone. They're replacing the scoreboard.
Oh,
yeah. It was gone. So, but there was something that I saw on ESPN. It was posted earlier, and he said what everybody's thinking, really, which was, quote, "It's been a kind of a later, slower offseason than normal. We were working pretty furiously, but since we spoke at winter meetings, just haven't lined up on particular opportunities. But there's still time for that," end quote.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's right. I mean, spring training is still about 3 weeks out, technically. But it is interesting to see Baltimore, who, I mean, this is a team that Tampa did something. Boston did something. The Yankees have done something. And this is a 100-win team. And Baltimore, we talked about Baltimore quite a bit in this offseason because I think they line up well. They also Dylan Cease lines up well for him too, and the White Sox haven't exactly pulled the trigger on that either. But it's, you know, or they have this glutton of infielders we've talked about, but even Blake's still out there. And I'm you know what, I don't know about you, but have you seen it? I haven't seen any rumors or anything pertaining to him whatsoever.
Not really. I think originally wasn't there some Seattle traction? But now people think they don't have any money because of the TV, right? So, yeah, I haven't heard much on Snell either. Hard to argue with Cy Young Awards, right? But I just get the feeling, I always get the sense nobody trusts him. Nobody trusts him to go more than 4 or 5 innings in a big game and walk 4 guys, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. And especially with all these teams that quote unquote need pitching, then I don't think they need pitching that bad then. I mean, it is what it is.
Here's what I wonder. On a what if. We talked about the what ifs earlier this week, right? Mike Ilitch. If he saw a guy like that or some of these other free agents lingering, At what point would he say, "Hey, why aren't we getting in on that?" Versus what we're doing now, which is kind of holding still.
Yeah. No, and Deadly Manager Beast points out that the Rays did not trust Snell in the World Series, so that's true. I mean, was it 5? It was I think 5 innings.
Yeah, and he was pitching well, and they yanked him.
No, I still think the Tiger, in terms of what Baltimore is going to be doing, I'm interested to see if it's just going to be whoever blinks first kind of thing, and it just seems like most teams are staying content with staying pat to a certain extent. But I don't know. I just thought it was just one of those things where he was just saying cliche kind of thing and nothing of interest. But
right.
Baltimore, out of all the teams that stand out in the American League that haven't done anything, Baltimore to me is the one that just sticks out like a sore thumb. Because if you're gonna make excuses not spending money, then that's your bullshit excuse, and that's fine. I almost expect that because that's what's gonna happen. But I know usually,
how many people here, Detroit observers, were on and like we talk about Lynn Henning a lot, and that's fine. We're on the board with, hey, got to get these youngsters in place first, and then add veterans around them, right? That's kind of what we heard from a lot of people. I was on the other side of that fence, and that's fine. I don't want to litigate that again. But obviously, Baltimore, they're playing it cool right now, but they have a lot of young talent in place. I mean, they're ready. I mean, that would be the team where say, yeah, let's add a couple of reliable veterans around them, leadership guys, production guys, to kind of limit where our floor is. And we're ready to go with these youngsters. And they haven't quite done it yet.
Yeah, I mean, Paul isn't too far off from that. I really believe that right there, which is, he says in the comments, Baltimore wants to deep minors because they won't ever sign their present stars. We'll trade them at 1.5 years left.
Possible.
I think it's feasible. I mean, the way it's judging right now. I mean, but then you still have to. They have to make a point to trade guys like Ortiz or some. You just can't let them sit there in the minors forever. I mean, it's absurd. But yeah, it is more than likely that. And I also agree with Todd too, which is ownership will turn a 100-win team into a shit pile. Ain't too far off from that either. It kind of reminds me of the White Sox in a way. The White Sox do really well. They have all this talent. They get there and then they tear it back down and start all over again. I mean, same can be said for a lot of teams, but it just seems a lot of times with Chicago and Baltimore.
If some of the guys they have in place don't tank, and if Jackson Holiday is a star, they might have amassed enough talent where they'll win despite the ownership. They're close. I mean, they have some real legit guys. I mean, when you say guys, the guys, not just guys,
Yeah. No, they got some. What was it? They got some dudes.
Yes.
They got guys at ball. So it's just interesting to see where, as far as the teams left in the American League that haven't really done, it's kind of, I don't know. I forgot to mention too, Houston signed Josh Hader. That gives them another opportunity to shorten up. And that was a good move by Houston because I felt like that was going to be something that their starters are already pretty solid, but you give that, now you shorten up the game with Hader back there. That's a difference maker right there, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. They're the big market team. They can afford something like that. All teams can afford most contracts, but especially they can afford that deal. They have the luxury of having enough talent in place where they can add a closer and it makes sense for what they want to achieve. It's interesting. I worry about that guy where he says, I won't pitch more than 1 inning. I mean, he's very kind of adamant about it, militaristic about it. So I don't know how much longer he has to go, but he's certainly, if they get 3 years out of that 5-year deal where he's still a smoking gun out of that bullpen, that's a pretty good deal for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's adamant about it because he knows probably perhaps his physical limit. And as far as Todd wants to know when the window will close for the Astros, I think you're looking at probably the way their farm system is right now. It's kind of not as strong as it used to be, but I still think Houston's competitive for at least the next year or two. I still think they're going to be. I mean, if you look at the AL West as a whole, Vegas is not doing anything for a while. Vegas is a joke. We're talking about the A's. The Mariners take one step forward, one step back, and their future remains unclouded. The Mariners still have they have a good farm system.
Mm-hmm.
And Texas, defending World Series champs, they're deep. They're built pretty to win, and I think it's gonna be between those two the whole time. So, and then the Angels, I don't know, like they have some really good players, but they don't have enough pitching as of yet. And Paul says we should get Ortiz and give him an equal younger player. Look, I've been on that Joey Ortiz train since middle of last year. I watched a lot of Norfolk versus Toledo, and that was the one play that always stood out to me. And the tie, I mean, Norfolk tied won AAA championship without too much of a hassle. So, but I did forget to mention though, Baltimore is they are scouting a pitcher, Michael Lorenz. So they might do the 1 year special thing there with that. So,
well, I mean, we've seen that can be effective. I mean, if you got to pick the right guy. You might end up with Mike Pelfrey. So, but Lorenzen last year, he was pitching well enough in the first half for Detroit where he could have helped a lot of teams.
That's correct. And Bergman's contract, I believe, ends. Let me double check this, but I believe it ends.
Bregman?
This year, yeah, Bregman. Pardon me. Bregman's contract.
Is this the last year of it?
It is let's see here. Yeah, this is his last year of that 5-year, $100 million deal he signed.
And he's a Boros guy, right? I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
So he's probably he'll hit the market most likely.
Yeah. Next
year.
But
Bregman this year, they still got Alvarez and Tucker for a couple more years. I doubt Altuve will go totally in the tank. He probably has at least some baseball left in him, right? How old is he now?
Right.
But that's the team. They're fine. I think they're the center fielder, kind of nice surprise for them. Chaz, what's his face? I can't remember his last name at the moment, but
Chaz McCormick.
McCormick, yeah. So I don't think they have a bigger. They don't have a lot to worry about right now.
And you look at the rotation and how they developed them from really $500,000 arms. I mean, this was a guys who they started the trend, as Chris and I have talked about this before, of signing older Latin pitchers that teams gave up on, and turn them into household names a little bit. So, but yeah, where you have to wonder is where that next big wave of Houston talent's going to be. And a guy like, you look at a guy like Luis Baez, who's way down. I mean, this is a guy who they signed a couple years ago, and he's one of the biggest among their prospects, one of the largest signing bonuses that Houston's ever done. But he's still a couple years away. You're not sure what about that. But beyond that, I mean, it's Spencer Allegretti, I believe it is, and he's down in AAA. But I mean, who knows if he's going to be effective or not. But either way, Houston finds to get it done. So we'll see what happens. A couple of in terms of MLB stuff that's going on, as far as rumors go, just kind of looking around the league a little bit. The Angels have interest in Joey Votto, so for potential just full-time DH, of course, because of Ohtani. And the Dodgers, or I forgot, the Diamondbacks signed Jock Peterson, who's going to be the team's DH. That's the Diamondbacks also too have had a really good offseason. I give them. We're gonna hopefully by the beginning of February we'll do our offseason grades for teams and go over that. But just like the Brewers, as Stan mentioned in the chat, Arizona's had a pretty good offseason. The Mets, there's other teams apparently that are interested in Franklin Herman, who, if you may not know or may not remember, who he ended his season last year with a clubhouse issue, and he was treated for alcohol abuse, and then prior to that, he had a domestic violence issue. So, it is what it is.
It is what it is. A lot of DHs left on the market, right? I mean, JD, Jorge Soler.
I'm still surprised.
I mean, Rhys Hoskins off to the market now. That might loosen things up a little. We'll see. And Peterson, but Boy, I don't care what anybody. I mean, we're all JD fans at one level or another here, but I just really have faith in the guy to age well. He showed it again last year. I know Detroit's a little log jammed with some outfielders, and you need the DH spot. But man, is JD Martinez a better hitter than anybody the Tigers will stick at DH this year?
There's somebody who asked about where JD is rumored to go, or Todd did, and the Tigers have been suggested, but there's no clear cut. From I always when it comes to JD, I've heard anywhere from the Dodgers to
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, so I mean, let's just look at really quick what's left out there in free agency, and this is the struggles of doing a podcast all year round come in right now, because I don't like speculating on stuff like this, but just looking at when we can look at and see in kind of what's left out there. So yeah, Corey Bellinger, you have Chapman, which was even suggested the Tigers do a 1-year deal with, and he's on there. I don't know what's going on with Chapman. I thought by now at least one team would have taken a flyer on him, but maybe it's another thing like I mentioned earlier. Who's going to blink first?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Tigers don't have anybody else better than that. So you have So you, in terms of actual Duvall's out there. I'm surprised too. Duvall hasn't got a flyer. Somebody's taking a flyer on him.
No matter what his weaknesses are, he drives in runs. Now we all have a different opinions of what RBI means as the stat, right? But facts are he knocks runs in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna. As far as Carpenter does present, Carpenter is a better outfielder. He's a better outfielder than people give him credit for. Even admittedly, he's come a long way since I saw him in Erie. He can hold his own out there in right field. But there is that school of thought. We'll let the young guys play, or as Old BK mentioned here, Tigers were 28th in OPS and runs scored in 2023. There's no positional log jams. He's right. And I still think the Tigers need a bat. I'm convinced of that. It's just a question of what kind of bat they're going to look for, because either you have to think about this from the standpoint of Chris posted the stat about Chapman's barrel rate. I think it was a hard hit. It's kind of his barrels have declined a little bit. So Matt Chapman's not going to be your easy fix. I mean, he's a temporary fix there at third base, depending on what the Tigers want to do long term. But I really at this point, look, if you want the Tigers to be the overwhelming favorites to win the Central Division, sign a bat. It's as simple as that. And not I know we're on the cusp of some prospects breaking through, but until they actually break here, you're going to sit there and say, well, if they sign a bat, those prospects can't play. Not necessarily the case. You can't say that, because there's no guarantees of anything. I mean, I look, as much as I'm the high man on Colt Keith, there's no guarantees. And no, Stan, it's just not just one bat. They need several bats, but it just depends on how they're going to go about it. I still think they need a power bat and a guy who can hit for average right on the top of the order. That's going to be an on-base percentage machine. And really force the issue where teams have to consider pitching down or the pitch around him, and then another hitter can seize the opportunity.
Boy, you put JD Martinez batting in front of Spencer Torkelson or vice versa. How does that lengthen your lineup? What does that look like, on a given night? That looks pretty good. And again, JD would get everybody excited. How many tickets do they sell if JD Martinez comes back? Not insignificant.
No, Todd is correct. Todd said that earlier in the chat. He would put asses in the seat. He absolutely would.
Oh, okay. Well, because I'm on my phone tonight, I can't see the chat. So apologies to Todd, but I agree, Todd.
Yeah, he would. And overall, I mean, getting back to it too, some of the names are left. Eddie Rosario too. That's another one I'm kind of surprised about too.
Yeah,
That's
not a
out
bad
there.
player. Absolutely.
Not bad. He's a left-hand bat. Had hit 21 home runs last year, but in terms of WAR-wise, not he's 1.4.
I know I've said it ad nauseum at points this winter, but geez, Jorge Soler, 36 bombs and a 341 on base percentage. Hello, that's two things the Tigers could really use right there. I mean, I'm not saying he automatically renews those numbers, but if he's even in the ballpark, let's say he hit 30 homers and a 335 on base, that'd be pretty nice.
I made my case on MCB about it because it makes a lot of sense, but I among the names that are left, that's probably him, JD Martinez, the ones that stand out.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the Tigers take a flyer on Tommy Pham because it seems like something the Tigers would do. So, but in terms of Stan, his numbers at Comerica Park, he had one really good year at Comerica Park. I think it was like 2019, 2020. I can't remember what it was, but he tore Soler, I'm referring to, had put up some really good numbers. So, but yeah, again, all I'm going to sit here and do is wait and see, and hopefully there's some sort of activity here that to finish the season. So, or the off season rather. But there is Pham does fit the culture too. That's another good point. But for whatever reason, I just think of some obscure player with that. So not obscure, but some named player like that. But hanging out here is helping my line anxiety attacks. So the Lions. So this is the first. Okay, so we're not going to talk too much football, but this is going to be a relatively short show. But I can't obviously point out, or there's a big lion in the room. That's a bad pun. That was a bad pun.
Yeah, humorous, quite humorous. Yes, droll, very droll. Yes, whimsical. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm giving myself a.
The Lions are out of the cage, man. They're going to San Francisco.
The Lions are going to San Francisco, where the last time they won was, I believe, 1957 when they last won the championship on their way to winning the championship.
I did not know that.
Prior to that, they lost 24-23 on December 30th, 31st, 1983. Eddie Murray missed a field goal. Gary Danielson, by the way, fun fact, threw 5 interceptions in that game, and the Lions still were able to.
Monty Clark.
Monty Clark. Yeah, with the prayer thing. Yeah, that's yeah. Lions, and what's interesting too. That's right in the rise of the 49ers too. That's like it was right before the 49ers became the 49ers, but it was just right early in that. And that was a. Well,
I remember very vividly that day. My dad is a lifelong Lions fan. I'm a Packer fan. We didn't really fight about it, but he loved the Lions. He could not watch that field goal. My dad left the room, and he could tell by how quiet I was that he missed it. I remember to this day, my dad yelling, "I knew he missed it," and it was very sad. But my dad's other being that I can tell you is my dad saw the 57 Lions play in Green Bay that year. So he was always very, since they never got to the Super Bowl in his lifetime, sadly, his big claim to fame was he got to see that 57 team win a game in Green Bay, which I was always happy for him to see that one.
Yeah, this is a game, too, where the Lions outrushed the 49ers 188-103.
Yeah.
And it was just the 5 interceptions that really, the Lions also control the time of possession, too. I mean, I didn't watch the game because obviously I was barely 2 years old, but I mean, I look at some of the I was looking at some of the stories about that game. Billy Sims, maniac, 20 carries, 114 yards. And, knowing full well about his knee injury and he would be out of football, not too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, like it's, there's it sucks. It sucks to know that we're that close. And no, you're right. BK, they did win the Super Bowl in 81, but I think I always think of the 49ers as this throughout the decade. Like the
dynasty came afterwards, right? They won the 81 Super Bowl, and that was, they even though it was only a 5-point game, they were ahead 20-0, I think, at halftime.
And that was a Silverdome. That was a Silverdome,
yeah.
One, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it was after that, and when they won that second, third, fourth Super Bowl, they were the dynasty.
Yeah.
But yeah, 5 picks for Danielson. Oof, my goodness. My dad hated Danielson. He always thought he smiled too much when things were going wrong. There he is, smiling again.
The quarterback, the first Lions quarterback that came to remember, I started remembering, was Eric Hipple. That was the first one of memory I could remember. But I mean, Eric Kramer was, you know what? There was a interview recently where Kramer was in town and he said some bad things about Wayne Fontes, and rightfully so, because he came into camp the next year as a third-string quarterback. I never understood why there was such a quarterback controversy for Eric Kramer between Rodney P. It was just, even like drafting, I don't know, a lot of things the Lions did back then.
Wayne Fontes.
Yeah, look, I will admit, the last decade, this team has beaten the soul out of me. And okay, Hipple was hurt for that game, which is why Danielson started. That makes. I wonder if they would have won the game if Eric Hipple would have started. It's a big what if scenario there, but it's.
Well, I'll tell you what. I really think the Lions win this game on Sunday. As a neutral observer, I watched that Packers. I watched the entire replay. I had to take my wife out to dinner last Saturday while the Packers were playing because it was her birthday and we had long-standing reservations I won't bore you with. But anyway, I watched the entire game. Watched the second half live. Watched the whole game the next day. The Packers dominated them for 3.5 quarters, right, on their field. And they should have won the game. I won't bitch and moan about it and cry about it, but they should have won. They didn't. They blew it. Made some mistakes. But I think they showed that Detroit, with that offensive line that the Lions have, they should be able to go in there and score some points. And on the other side of the football, if Deebo Samuel is either not playing or is a shell of himself, I think that really eliminates one of Detroit's biggest weaknesses, pass defense, right? Not eliminates it, but really lessens the threat. Because Deebo Samuel he's a dude. I mean, he's legit. So I think Detroit wins that game. I think Detroit wins the game by 10 points or more. I really do. San Francisco did not impress me the other night. Well, maybe they were just rusty from the layoff. I don't know. But the Packers had them, and they let them off the hook. And I don't think Dan Campbell will let them off the hook.
So here's the thing. I like to believe what you're saying to me, Uber, right now. I really would. But I can't. I can't because it's not the ye of little faith. The Lions have not played their best football last 2 games, so it makes me think they're due to play an outstanding game. That being said, I'm not saying it's the same old Lions because it's not. SOL does not exist with this team anymore, period.
Sure.
And I've done it's Brad Holmes has done a phenomenal job of building this roster. Top down, probably the best GM in town. There's no question about it, based off what he's done in the draft. It's all looking good and it's all promising, but I am such a cynic when it comes to because this team has destroyed me. I mean, for heaven's sake, I had a Joey Harrington jersey at one point. Okay, I mean, you ask yourself, well, Roger, you stuck around during really bad '90s Tigers baseball. You were watching a lot of games then, but why'd you give up on the Lions? The Tigers may have not made a lot of sense, like Randy Smith doing trades at the time, but at least because Randy Smith was limited on the fact that the Illegers weren't spending back then until they got to Comerica Park. So Randy Smith did everything he humanly could to make that team better. Did it work? Hell no. It did not work. But he also at least added computers to an organization. He made a team. I'll give him a lot of credit. Smith modernized the team the best that he could based off what he had.
He got rid of the rotary phones.
Yeah, he got rid of the rotary phones. Instead, I'm getting Marty Morgenweg and Matt Millen riding on motorcycles and this whole stupid BS.
Marinelli.
But those two in that particular moment where they're riding in on their motorcycles, like badasses, like knock it off. And then you draft receivers back to back. Like some of the things they did draft night made no sense at all. There was no rhyme, no reason behind it, none. I mean, sorry that Charles Rogers passed away, and that was bad news. And then you get Mike Williams, just fat, overweight dude. Roy Williams, he does this publicity stint where he doesn't tip drivers, so he goes around acting like a delivery driver. Listening to a lot of sports radio like I did growing up, like the Sean Belizeans of the world, and hearing the pain in their voices talking about this damn team, it just broke me. The Tigers started getting better after 2002. The rest, we know the history with that. At least they won a couple World Series, but it was just, when you watch NFL films, music scores in the 70s and 80s, you always see the same teams, the Raiders, the Cowboys, even the Patriots. I mean, the Patriots were pretty good in the late 70s, early 80s under Steve Grogan as a quarterback.
Sure.
The Lions didn't have that. There was no NFL films music for the Lions. It was more, it was just, a lot of times you're hearing stuff like this. I mean, you're hearing clown music. I mean, that's the way the Lions were. And I leave you with this, folks, because I think we're gonna wrap it up here this evening. As of course, if something happens, we'll let you know. And as far as content, we're gonna start cranking out content this week, starting this week, or next week rather. I wrote a piece for the White Sox blog, by the way. I know some people were like, I know Deadly Ninja B said something, but I'm planning on writing a lot more this year. Although, by the way, I did like this take here. Gio Martinez is greater than Joe Mauer. Is that a hot take? Mauer's pretty good at his position.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe, but you have to really dive into those numbers and see. But, Mauer lengthened his career by playing first base. He wasn't a great first baseman. Do you count that against him? Obviously, the voters did not.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Raj. I'm going to tell you this about the Lions. After watching that game, the Packer offensive line is good, but not great. They were able to run the football on the 49ers. Okay. The Detroit offensive line, I think, is, a grade better than the Packers. Right.
Right.
And the Packers held Bosa. I mean, a guy named Rashid Walker, who was a 7th-round draft pick last year, was stoning Bosa all night. You can't tell me that, either Sewell or who's your other tackle, Decker?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those guys should be able to hold their own too. And I think Detroit's going to run the football. I would think that Gibbs and Montgomery will have a nice day.
If Samuel's out, then I feel better about their chances.
Mm-hmm.
But Chris McCaffrey is a weapon.
And
San Francisco
Kittle.
is, yeah. You got Kittle. So, but the Lions also signed Zach Ertz, 4-time Pro Bowler. So I don't know how effective he will be, but we'll see what happens. I mean, both Ford and GM have switched the production times, so their employees can watch the game.
Nice.
I think, and I saw something along the lines. I believe the Lions game was one of the most viewed games outside the Super Bowl in the last couple of years. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's insane.
I'm going to say 31-21 Lions, and it's an embarrassment if Detroit loses. There you go.
Yeah. So, by the way, he said he saw Chris Illidge in the booth at the Bucks game. Oh, there you go. Maybe.
Yeah. Notes, Chris.
Yeah. I haven't seen him out in public in a long time, by the way. But at any rate, so please consider donating to our Patreon, we have 2 ways to donate. You can donate to our PayPal, like our friend Stan did. Thank you, Stan. And I'll send the links in here in a second. So we have our Patreon, GoFundMe, which goes towards all our costs for the Tiger Minor Report. and just basically here too as well. It doesn't, the money goes everywhere. Thanks to Clay, thanks to Jonathan who sent in some donations in the last couple of days. So thank you for that. I really we definitely appreciate that. And so I put the link in there for that. And then if you want to just donate to the Tigers Minor League Report or the other link, I'm putting that together right now. You can also go to that as well. There's a store too. So if you want to buy a shirt, by the way, I sent out our winner of the Ty Cobb bobblehead out. So
Nice.
And I hooked up a longtime fan with a shirt because he's been around since 2015.
Nice.
So I had to do it because he made a comment about being around, and so he has one of the old Tigers SRD shirts. So that is, it's not worth much, but hey,
I saw mine the other day.
Did you? Nice.
Yeah, I was cleaning out a closet because my wife and I, we put together we got a new king size bed, right? We had a king size bed for the last 23 years. Finally got rid of it. Came in dozens and dozens of parts. Okay, I was scared. The credit to my wife and I is we made it through that experience of assembling that bed. No threats, no divorce lawyers were contacted, no insults. I was very proud of my wife and I. We have that thing, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, Matt, no problem. Thank you for tuning in, and appreciate you always contributing and tuning into the podcast. So, yeah, hopefully it came. From my understanding, it's shipped out already. It's probably getting faster than the stickers that I ordered. But at any rate, so those are ways you can help us out. And yes, we'll be back next week. Hopefully, Chris will be on the mend. I did talk to him. I talked to him a little earlier on the phone too. His voice did sound pretty hoarse, but it's just I was making jokes because he coaches kids, his son's flag football team, and I was like, oh, the unwashed masses, and we had a fun laugh with that. So go Lions! I'm not gonna make any predictions. If the Lions are due, look, the Lions are due. Detroit. Of all the things, it's Hubert. I wish I had your confidence.
Oh, Lions fans, it's a lock. Take it to the bank. Put some money on it.
All right. Well, by the way, we're not responsible if you lose money on the game, so I'm not giving you betting advice. Or you can go and bet online. Our friends over Bet Online, they'll take care of that for you. But on that note, we'll talk to you next week. Have a good week, everybody. And yes, go Lions.
Enjoy the game.
Yeah. By the way, on the AFC side of things, I'm rooting for Baltimore. Baltimore is I've always been a big fan of the Ravens, and yeah. So on that note, we'll see you next week. Yeah, please.